Hey everyone, so these are my thoughts on the case that was presented to us for discussion number three. Obviously, there were a lot of ethical and legal issues in this particular scenario, and I think that ultimately what happened was this LPC, who was, very experienced at this point. In the article it said that she had been an LPC for about 15 years, and this particular client case, she had seen this client for 7 years. So, she had a long history at one, being an LPC, and two, being a counselor to this particular client. But I think in this particular scenario, this counselor, this LPC, just got too complacent and just too, I guess, lazy in keeping up proper and current documentation, which ended up costing this counselor, a suspension on their license and, being having to be supervised when, they obviously at this point in their career shouldn't have to be supervised because you're at least should be very experienced and, you know what you're doing essentially when it comes to not only your techniques in counseling and using your theories, but also, knowing when to document, what to document, and, knowing how to keep confidentiality between clients. Because obviously, in this case, she was seeing one client and was also later seeing the client's spouse. And because this counselor didn't have the proper and current documentation to show, hey, both of these clients, consented to this, then, the board saw that she didn't have any documentation to prove that, both clients agreed to this, then that got her in trouble. And I think just the moral of this particular scenario for all of us is to ensure that, yes, obviously we're doing everything we can with our clients in terms of, again, the theories that we use and the techniques that we use. But what's even more important than all of that is to make sure that we're keeping everything documented, whether it's down to informed consent or, keeping communication with clients outside of sessions and, just keeping the client in the loop on what you want to be doing, because you can verbally tell them, hey, this is what we will be doing in our sessions, or hey, I think it would be nice to bring your spouse into this session so we can all, kind of work together in this. But if you don't have the written proof that that's what you're going to do with the client, then your word essentially means nothing to the board or to the client because you don't have the physical documentation of that. So yeah, I think it's just a good lesson for all of us to ensure that no matter how long we're in the practice or how good we think that we are at what we do, that at the end of the day, if we don't keep documentation as clear, concise, and current as it needs to be, then we're not doing our jobs to the best of our abilities. And if we're not doing the job to the best of our abilities, ethically and legally, then that can cause some serious harm for ourselves and for our clients. So thank you guys for listening, and I appreciate it.